All right, and we're up. Shout out to our Y'all-itics crew, always bringing us great content. I'm Dia Wall. Welcome to the WFAA Plus Election Day Party with my friend Morgan Young. So happy you're here with us. So we've spent a lot of time talking, of course, about the presidential campaign, about endorsements. We've gotten people up to speed on the election process, what happens after Election Day. But you are here because you have been following Colin Allred's campaign, the congressman looking to unseat the incumbent, Ted Cruz. You talked to the campaign today. What do they have to say?
We did, Dia. The Colin Allred campaign actually had an event today at noon. They were at the Democratic Party headquarters in Dallas County hosting a phone bank event, and then that was followed by a block walk. This is the final campaign event for the Allred campaign, and he was able to speak. He was also supported by some of his fellow Democrats. We saw Congressman Mark Vesey speaking there. We saw one of our state lawmakers, Nathan Johnson, there as well, and he really is just making that final pitch to voters. That is what they're saying.
Feeling?
Confident, but also very realistic. They're saying, they really are harping on the fact that every single vote counts. We've talked about how tight this race is. So in this phone bank, event, they're saying every single person they talk to is important. Every call they make is important. Every vote counts for them.
We have Teresa Woodard, who is actually covering Ted Cruz and company. They have a watch party there in Houston tonight. Hi, Teresa. The ladies are all accounted for. Talk to us about Ted Cruz, his campaign. Have you spoke with them today?
Hey guys, yeah, so I spoke with one of the communications officers for the Ted Cruz campaign, maybe about an hour or so ago. They let me know Ted Cruz spent his morning on the radio. They said they hit many different cities and counties across Texas, trying to just sort of get that last minute push in to try to get out the vote on this election day. They are feeling cautiously optimistic, I think is the word. And I know that's a word that a lot of campaigns use. But I think they like what they're seeing as far as turnout goes. They also like what they're seeing as far as the energy level goes at all the rallies that they have held. And they have really crisscrossed this state in about the last 3 to 4 weeks. He has been on this bus tour all across Texas. He's called it the Keep Texas, Texas tour. He has hit small towns, but he's also hit some big places. Like yesterday, he was in San Antonio, he was in Denton. And then, of course, last night he wrapped up his race, or his campaign rather, here in Houston. This is Senator Ted Cruz's hometown. Harris County is trending more and more blue, but he was in the northwest corner of Harris County last night in Cypress, which I understand is Morgan's hometown. And that corner of Harris County, if you go just a little past it, you get into Waller County and Grimes County, and those are very deep red places. So he's in Houston today. He will be at his watch party at a hotel across the street from where I'm staying. The hotel where the watch party is was just a little too pricey, and so we're in a cheaper hotel across the street in downtown Houston.
Teresa, we love a sustainable queen. Do you hear me? We love a conscious
There
queen
you
when
go.
it comes to the
You gotta
budget.
do what you gotta do.
And I do want to say, I do like the Cypress shout out though, because we talk about Houston a lot, and I
Yes.
do love Houston, but Cypress. When I saw my little hometown name up there, I said, okay, Cypress.
Well, let's stick with that suburbs theme, right? Like when you go back to 2018, the last time Ted Cruz ran for re-election, there were 15 and a half, a little bit more than that, million registered voters in the state of Texas. That's up by 15%, y'all. Over 18 and a half million registered voters in the state. You would have to guess, Teresa Morgan, a lot of those people don't just live in urban centers. We see the suburban sprawl here in North Texas every day.
We do, and Teresa was just talking about the area of Harris County. One of the counties that came up in our event today that we attended was Tarrant County, and that was a part of the conversation, even earlier this year in the primaries, the significance of Tarrant County, a county that has traditionally been a red county, but what we saw in 2018 was looking more of a shade of purple. And so it's strategic, it's something that they're really focusing on, and when you talk about the new voters and where they're moving to, I would say both candidates, Teresa, are really, focusing on those communities, focusing on those new voters who are in those communities.
I feel like I need to give a quick shout out to my older brother, 48 years old, Teresa Morgan. First election today was the first time he had ever voted. No party affiliation, Tarrant County voter. First time showing up at the polls at 48.
Wow.
So I will warn you guys, I'm having a little bit of Wi-Fi issue, I suppose, or something, so you're breaking up a bit. But I did catch that you're talking about new voters. And I actually, earlier today, was just checking my numbers to make that right. And so one of the things that I think is really important for people to keep in mind tonight as they are watching returns is that we now have 18.6 million registered voters in the state of Texas. That's almost 3 million more than in 2018, which is the last time that Ted Cruz was on the ballot. And so the grand question is, what do those people do? How will they vote? And of course, nobody knows. I mean, we can make some guesses. If they are moving to Texas, maybe it's because they're attracted to, some of the business climate, the political climate, maybe, or maybe it's just because their job moved them here. Where are they living? If they're living in suburbs, are they picking the suburbs because that's, a place where they feel community? Or are they like, you know what? I got driven out of the city because I couldn't afford my rent. It's a little more affordable to live out here in the suburbs, but I still hold true to some of those more urban values that drove my vote before. So I don't think we know exactly how all of those new voters are going to vote. Just keep that in mind. There are almost 3 million new registered voters in the state of Texas since the last time Ted Cruz was on the ballot. He won in 2018 by just 215,000 votes. So that's a small margin. And when you think about all of those new voters, and you just don't know exactly how they are going to vote. I know that Morgan also mentioned Tarrant County. So in 2012, the first time that Ted Cruz was on the ballot, he won in Tarrant County. And then in 2018, he just barely lost Tarrant County. So it will be really interesting to see exactly how tonight turns out for Tarrant County. It's less than a 1% difference between him and Beto O'Rourke from that 2018 Senate race.
You know what, Teresa? You are absolutely right. I went back. I wanted to be prepped because I was talking to you ladies. Ted Cruz won Tarrant County in 2018 by 4,000 votes. That is the slimmest of margins. Let's pivot a little bit to some of the issues for voters when it comes to this Senate race. Morgan, what are you hearing from voters on what's driving them on whether they're going to cast their ballot for Allred or Cruz?
You hear a mixed bag from voters, but I can tell you that the Allred campaign over the past week, he's spoken on his stance on a number of issues, has really been hammering in on the issue of abortion. That is where we have really seen him lean in this past week. We have seen his campaign sending out a signed letter from doctors and Texas women. We have seen him, writing statements condemning Texas's abortion ban and really attributing that ban to Ted Cruz. That really seems to be where he's dug his heels into. And really that is the topic that he is bringing up when he is making that final pitch in interviews, making his final pitch at events, wanting to remind Texans where he stands on the issue of abortion and trying to really be strategic and using voices from doctors and women to support his stance on that space.
Teresa, what about you? What are you hearing from voters on the issues that are going to, compel them to vote for either candidate?
Okay, guys, guess what? I'm having real big problems hearing you. And so I think if it's possible, I'm going to disconnect. And so if you can get the word to the digital team for Pete and Jay to maybe send me another link. I'm going to see if when I disconnect and reconnect, I get a better Wi-Fi signal. I'm really sorry, but I can't hear you. I can hear like little, those, it sounds like a robot. So let's try. Let's try to disconnect and reconnect and fingers crossed, okay?
All right, we'll do it. It's only going to take a couple minutes. We're trying to do a lot of things here. We want to make sure that we're bringing you the best coverage here on WFAA Plus. So we got to be nimble. We got to be agile. But abortion access seems to be a big theme, Morgan, across the country, not just when it comes to the race for Senate. Even if you look at the Harris campaign, this is one of the top things. Even the big rally in Houston, they said would have a theme of reproductive rights. Part of the reason probably that Colin Allred was there.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to get Teresa back in a minute, but one thing, that as she's been covering this campaign, because, we kind of have to pay attention to each other's races to get this pretty accurately. She said even yesterday, his big campaign is that, saying a Colin Allred is not right for Texas, really standing on, we saw it in the debate, standing on the fact that he is the incumbent in this race, saying, look what I've done, look at the track record I have, look at who I've been. And on the other side of that, you've got Colin Allred saying, hey, it's time for something new. Right. Texas needs something new. He believes he's that something. So it's really this conversation, no matter really what the issue is, of I've been here, I've done this, I've been in Texas, and has this actually been working for you? That seems to be the conversation that the two candidates are having on either side of this, no matter really what the issue is, whether it's abortion, whether it's the economy, whether it's immigration, old versus new. That seems to be it.
Well, why don't you go ahead and set the scene for us tonight? Obviously, you're going to be busy, and alongside the Allred campaign, what's kind of your plan for the rest of the day? So
for the rest of the day, we obviously went to that event at the Democratic Party headquarters in Dallas County at noon. Doors open for Colin Allred's watch party this evening at 7. We're going to get there around 5 so we can start, gathering and seeing who starts to show up there. He is having his watch party in the Cedars neighborhood in Dallas in the Longhorn Ballroom. That is a historic music venue. So we're going to be out there all evening. We know that there are different Democratic officials who are going to be there in support of him. We'll be curious to hear from some of those people. And, you asked about voters, we want to hear from voters why this was their choice, especially some of those voters who did not vote this way the last time they had this choice. What switched their vote?
Is that something they're counting on, Morgan? A lot of people who are maybe Republicans in terms of their registration who are going to move over and vote for Allred?
It is, and I think we've really heard that in the messaging. We're hearing two things. We're hearing, Colin Allred say, look at what's happened here. You need a different voice. We've heard that. And we're also really hearing him say, and he's been consistent in saying how good he is and how he intends to reach across the aisle. Congressman Mark Vesey spoke about him today, saying that he has proven as a U.S. congressman that he can work with Republicans, he can work with independents, really trying to appeal to other voters who might not typically vote for a Democrat and say, hey, I've got this track record of working with people from other parties, and kind of really positioning himself kind of more as like in the middle, as opposed to being maybe someone who might be too liberal for a traditional Republican voter.
Important to note that Congressman Colin Allred flipped a seat that had been held by a conservative for a very long time by Republicans. And so I think that may have been part of where his support base came in initially to become the Democratic candidate in this race. How much attention do you think they're giving to the polls?
I think they are giving a lot of attention to the polls because they have shown that this race is so tight. And, we keep bringing up this 2018 race between Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke because I really think that it showed that this is not a guarantee win for Republicans. We saw that this could go a different way. And I really feel like the Allred campaign is building on that momentum. And so when they see these type polls, they see that it's within the margin of error. That's giving them that, that space to say, hey, we could actually win this thing, and saying every vote counts. That's why they're ending with a phone bank. That's why they're really trying to appeal to people who maybe have not made a decision yet, people who are first-time voters, and we're kind of figuring out where they stand on these issues. They're really taking advantage of what they're seeing.
All right, let's check in. Hey guys, do you think we're going to be able to get Teresa back in here? All right, so they're working on it right now for us, but we do want to show you some live imagery as voting is underway. We're ticking down about 4.5 hours until the polls close. It looks like we've got Dallas, Tarrant, Colin, and Denton counties there. I mean, it looks like they got a nice little stream, not too crazy, not too chaotic, but I don't know how many folks are voting at 2:30 in the afternoon. I would anticipate that some of these locations get a little more busy after the workday finishes. And we got the lady of the hour, Teresa Woodard, back up for us. And Teresa, Morgan's been doing yeoman's work here, helping us understand both the Cruz and Allred campaigns. We were talking about the issues before. What issues is Ted Cruz counting on to motivate voters to tick the box for him?
Well, I think, I certainly would say the number one thing I would think would be border immigration and security. That's something that at all of his rallies he has talked at length about. It's what many of his ads have been based on. The other issue that he does bring up quite a bit during his rallies, and a lot of his ads have also been based on, is the issue of transgender rights. And it's certainly an issue that is, I think, divisive, and it could maybe draw some people to the polls. But I think as a whole, Ted Cruz's main issue is, border security, immigration, second, economy when it comes to policy, and then also driving people out with the transgender issues that he's raised in many of his campaign ads. I will say, though, it's interesting. Last night at the rally in Houston, he was delayed big time because of, we all had storms all across Texas yesterday. And so his flight was delayed and everything. But some of the people who were speaking before him, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, Wesley Hunt, who's a congressman from here in the Houston area, Kim Ogg, who is a Democrat, and many of us, if we've been watching TV, we've seen her because she's a Democrat, the DA in Harris County, and she has endorsed Ted Cruz, the Republican, in this race. And, they also were hammering home the point about crime and security and the border. That was really the big theme, it seemed like. But I do think here in the last few weeks, we've really seen Ted Cruz really driving home the point that he is firmly in the camp with Donald Trump and that the former president is wholeheartedly endorsing him. And, about, I want to say it was not last week, but the week before, the former president was in Austin and Ted Cruz was with him there at I don't want to call it really a campaign rally. It was when the former president had recorded the Joe Rogan podcast in Austin, and he did a little bit of a media event afterwards, and Ted Cruz was beside him there. It happened to be the same day that Kamala Harris was in Houston with the big Beyonce rally, and Colin Allred was at that. So I think late in the campaign, you started to see both candidates sort of tie themselves more closely to the top of the ticket. Earlier in the campaign, it felt like particularly Colin Allred was trying to draw a distinction between him and the rest of the Democratic Party. But I think here lately you've seen Cruz with a real focus on border immigration, security, crime, and Donald Trump.
All right, ladies, as we wind down to this very, very important election, I want to get your final thoughts. Anything that you feel like people at home should be looking out for and watching for as those results start to come in tonight. We'll start with you, Morgan.
You know, I think the big thing that, you know, we as a news outlet are doing, and I'm seeing so many do, is just really trying to educate voters on how this process works. You know, Teresa and I were talking about this the other day, that there is a chance that maybe you go to bed tonight and you don't know. We don't know who the winner is. And I know that this is a space where, you know, that can kind of create a space for, you know, misinformation and that kind of thing. So just really trusting your local news outlets and your trusted outlets to really give you the information that you need, and just know that the polling has been really tight, not just in this election, but in the presidential election as well. So just trusting the process and being patient with the process because we might not know.
Okay. Teresa?
Yeah, I absolutely echo that. I think the idea of just being comfortable with not knowing when you go to bed tonight, and go to bed. I mean, don't stay up all night. We'll stay up all night for you. So get some rest. But I think being comfortable with that. But the other thing I would just reiterate is, you know, some of the numbers I said earlier is just how many people live in this great state of ours, and how many of them are new, and how many of them have never voted in this state before. So those are the things I'll be watching. I'm going to be really interested, as Morgan pointed out earlier, Tarrant County is very interesting to me. I live in Tarrant County, and so I like to watch the numbers closely there, but also just because, you know, it has traditionally been a more red urban county, but yet are we seeing shades of purple, and where does it go this time? I think closely watching what's coming out of the border communities will be very interesting in this specific Senate race. And then those suburbs, that's kind of the areas around Dallas and Austin and Houston. And just, are we seeing more pink there? Are we starting to see light blue there? That's going to be the interesting thing. And I say all this knowing that it might be tomorrow or the day after before we can dive deeply into some of the results from some of those areas and pick apart who did what and who leaned which way. But that's what I'll be watching for tonight.
Well, ladies, we cannot thank you enough. You both looking good, ready for the election. I'm doing fashion reviews while I'm up here hanging out on WFAA Plus as well.
I didn't just let me just say, I didn't want to put on my blazer yet and get it all wrinkly. So apologies. I thought for a digital show I could be a little more cash, but
you can.
I will
You're
look
still
a little
cute.
better than a t-shirt when I go on the news tonight.
Yeah. And you know, we've talked about it. Teresa and I have to coordinate the fits. So she, you know, I'm not gonna ruin the reveal of her fit, but it's gonna be a fit.
Listen, we know Teresa's gonna bring the looks, the education, and the context. We love it, and we are so grateful to have you there in Houston covering the Cruz campaign. For you, Morgan, to be covering the Allred campaign here for us in Dallas. We've said it a million times. This is a race that not only we here in North Texas and across the state of Texas will be watching, but the entire country. So it was only right that WFAA, Channel 8, our home here, hosted the only debate in this race. It was called the Texas Debate just a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to replay that for you right now.